in the treatment of this latest badge. Aissatou Badiane Sarr, Grts.
The body of the late farmer Landing Jatta was Tuesday evening laid in state at the National Assembly. The Vice President and Minister of Women's Affairs, Her Excellency Aja Dr. Aissatou Sedi, Cabinet Ministers, the Chief Justice, former National Assembly members, diplomats, religious leaders and other members of the public paying their last respects to the former Finance Minister and one-time Governor of the Central Bank, filed past his flag-draped coffin. Jatta's remains were later laid to rest at the Banjulindin Cemetery after the usual prayers. Mamoudou Diallo reports.
The flag-draped coffin of the late farmer Landing Jatta was Tuesday afternoon laid in state at the National Assembly. The Vice President and Minister of Women's Affairs, Her Excellency Aja Dr. Aissatou Sedi, Cabinet Ministers, former National Assembly members, diplomats and other sympathizers gathered to pay their last respects to a man described by many as a great servant of the country. The somber ceremony was presided over by Fatou Bai, Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, who described the late farmer Jatta as a perfect gentleman.
Honorable Jatta passed away while serving the African Development Bank as Executive Director in Tunisia. The late Honorable Farmer Jatta was indeed a great servant of this country, who contributed immensely to the socio-economic development of this, our great nation.
The Vice President, Her Excellency Aja Dr. Aissatou Sedi, was also among many others who paid tribute to the late farmer Jatta.
Farmer is an humble, respectful, as well as respectable, diligent, committed, friendly, caring, God-fearing, national, and of course now, until lately, international public servant par excellence. Not only that, his neighbors in Banjulini would tell you that he was a good neighbor. His nucleus family would tell you he was a good father and husband. And his extended relatives and other relatives would tell you that he was a good relative at that.
During his stint as member of cabinet and as governor of Central Bank, we as parliamentarians had an excellent working relationship with the late farmer Jatta. He is accessible and willing to throw light on all issues under his domain.
Yes, he is physically dead, but he is going to continue to live in this world because he has stamped the world with his mark. That is what a human being is about. That is what makes us different from other creatures of Allah. We stamp the world with our mark, and therefore by stamping the world with our mark, we make ourselves ever living.
Adama Gay, a longtime friend of the late farmer Jatta, in a eulogy, recounted the life story of a man who defied the odds to become one of the country's most distinguished sons.
Famara was born in Banjulinding village on 16 July 1958. 3 years younger than me. He went to Armitage High School in his formative secondary education life. It was at Armitage that Famara was initiated and instilled in him his God-given signature character of self-discipline, compassion, respect, and above all, calm, or dull, as the Wolof would say.
Several other speakers, including Papa Lee, Amadou Koli, Governor of the Central Bank of the Gambia, and Aminata Jara of the African Development Bank, also paid glowing tributes to the late farmer Jatta. The dignitaries later filed past the coffin to pay their last respects before the body was driven to Banjulinding for burial. The scene at the family compound in Banjulinding was equally somber, as neighbors and other sympathizers joined family members to mourn the death of their son and brother. Various speakers at the ceremony extolled the virtues of a man whom they described as religious, humble, and respectful. The Vice President, Aja Dr. Aissatou Sedi, presented $111,000 to the family of the deceased on behalf of the President of the Republic, His Excellency Sheikh Professor Dr. Alhaji Yahya Jammeh, and his former cabinet colleagues also presented $15,000 to the family. His remains were later interred at the Banjulinding Cemetery, but for the people of this community and the Gambia at large, The demise of one of his most illustrious sons is a great loss which has left a huge vacuum, but his memory lives and will be forever remembered by his relatives, colleagues and friends. The late Famara Jatta is survived by a wife and 3 children. Mamadou Diallo, Grts.
Well, the untimely demise of Famara Jatta left family and friends reeling from shock. The seasoned economist was one of the hosts of Gambian expatriates who attended and participated in the recent meeting that brought together Gambians in the diaspora and those residing and working here for discussions on national development. The Harvard-trained economist fully supported the program for accelerated growth and employment page. Ibrahim Balde reminds us about the vital intervention he made at the first presentation of page.
It's well overdue. We should implement that and then look at the sales as whether it's private or so. But the most important thing is how do you address domestic resource mobilization? I haven't seen that in page.
Famara Jatta was among the list of Gambian experts who had served his time in government as one-time trade and finance ministers and central bank governor. Having served the best part of his time in the public sector, Jatta's move to the international community as a public servant working in Sudan and Tunis for the African Development Bank meant that from time to time he often shared during elite gatherings such as this one held at Karaba at the start of the year his knowledge and experience on issues that were put before him. And this was a session that was specifically meant for people like him to contribute his ideas towards the development of his motherland, even though he was mostly away from home. Yet on this day, with colleagues, the session was meant to drum out more support for the program for accelerated growth and employment page, and Gambian experts abroad were expected to throw their weight behind page.
VAT is well overdue. We should implement that and then look at the sales as whether it's private or so.
This was the last session for him in his capacity as an international civil servant, as an economist, a diplomat, and most importantly, as a patriot. On this historic forum at the start of the new year, Famara Jatta has undoubtedly left a void. He died leaving his family and friends and colleagues, talking about things he has done and things he couldn't do while alive.
The Chief of Defense Staff of the Gambia Armed Forces has told the Gambian contingent serving under the United Nations African Mission in Darfur that the Army High Command has gone very far in meeting the material requirements of the contingent. Lieutenant General Masane Kinte made the remarks during his recent visit in Darfur, where he held extensive discussions with members of the Gambian contingent. Abubakar Dabo traveled with the CDS delegation to Darfur, Sudan, and this is his report.
The fact-finding mission embarked upon by the Chief of Defense Staff of the Gambia Armed Forces and his delegation of Army High Command to the troubled Sudanese region of Darfur was a giant project with an expansive ambition. Its core objectives were to explore firsthand the situation of the 13th contingent of the Gambia Armed Forces currently serving under the United Nations Africa Mission in Darfur, identify the capacity gap in relation to human resources and equipment, and lastly discuss with mission authorities on improving the situation of his soldiers. The 2 days of flight finally got the delegation to Darfur, where the Chief of Defense Staff, Lieutenant General Masani Kinte, and delegation were received by the UNAMID First Chief of Staff, Brigadier General Modou Sow, Commanding Officer of GAMCOI 13th, Lieutenant Colonel Salifu Bojang, and other senior mission officials, including Landing 13 Baji. The delegation's first port of call was the office of the Acting Force Commander of UNAMID, Major General Juan Jones Kisamba, who with open arms described the CDS visit as a show of absolute care and commitment towards the welfare of his men and women. He harped on the exceeding moral standing and military professionalism Gambian peacekeepers have always exhibited during their course of operation, paying homage to the effective home lessons of the contingent and the guidance of their Army High Command. Lieutenant General Masani Kinte, rejoicing over the words of accolades showered on his men and women under arm, spoke of the importance of his visit as a show of willingness from the Gambia Army and the Commander-in-Chief to provide the needed technical and material support to boost operation in the mission.
We are aware of the difficulties, and that is all the more reason why, having assumed office about 2 years now, I said I must go to Darfur and then see my troops, see how they are doing, see their working and living condition, and then see how best, we can, help to uplift their morale.